some point, we're going to have to come up with a $12,494 for the two 15-mile-an-hour signs along Radnor Chester Road.
You mean those lit signs or just an
The
actual
15 mile an
sign
hour is
that flash?
when the flash.
And this was something we
schools-
asked for?
schools
Well, apparently asked the township for it.
Don't they
And
have
it's
to
something
ask
they
us?
would put out instead of us? I mean, why didn't we put that out to bid?
Technically, we could, well, let me say, we could put it out for bid, yes, we could. We cannot install them because we can install it on our property, but we cannot install it on the other side of the street
Okay,
because we have no control of the public right-of-way, whereas the township does.
got it.
So we can, yes, go out for bid, and certainly I have been asking around prices to get competitive positions on this, but at some point, we're going to have to move forward on this.
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea to have the signs up. I guess my question is whether 12,000 sounds like a reasonable number.
So, somebody went to the town traffic safety committee, and then they said yes, and then PennDOT said yes, and then they said, great, here's a bill. You guys have to pay this, and this is the first time we've heard of it.
Where are the signs again?
The signs will be along Radnor Chester Road, between Lancaster Avenue and the TD Bank, and then further up by the air gas building, across the street by the air gas building, by where our parking lot exits
And
out.
they're vertical
They're the school's
The
safety
school
zone,
safety
blinking
zone,
things like
single
out front.
pole, not across the street.
blinking,
Yes, correct.
but not across the street.
Not across the street, correct.
Nobody even slows down to the ones that are on King of Prussia Road, just for the record.
Right.
Which is another thing the township's looking at, in case they haven't talked to you about, is putting traffic, some sort of pedestrian crossing
Ah.
right at St. Martin's Church, where it should have been for probably the last 20 years. But since we built that building, it's pretty disastrous, and I understand. I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen for sure, because people walk to the school,
Mhm.
whether they should or they shouldn't, doesn't matter. They do, and I know they're looking at that. So we
Yes.
may want to engage in that conversation too, in case that bill comes our way as well.
I appreciate that.
Has the township offered to foot any of it?
No.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You take my shot.
is that it?
That's it.
Fantastic. Is there any public comment? Going once for public comment? Emily?
This is you.
Gretchen? Emily?
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted us to comment on the signs.
No, just in general, public comment.
Can we come up?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
great. I'm bringing props. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
You could
press
push
the
the
mic
button
on.
there.
All right. Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a senior at Radnor High School.
What's your last name?
Rios.
And I'm Gretchen Grobel. I'm the executive director of Radnor Conservancy. And Emily was one of my 6 interns that I had this summer. And we had four Radnor High School interns. And I'm going to kick it over to you just to, and then I'll chime in.
Oh, we just wanted to talk about our styrofoam in the school cafeterias and how we should maybe switch to a more eco-friendly alternative. And so we were suggesting maybe we could either try using reusable trays that we would like dishwash, and then we would have to invest in like industrial dishwashers, or we could maybe use like these that we have here, which are like compostable versions of what we have. And those are just like a few of the options that we were considering.
So we were curious if there was a reason why you guys went to styrofoam trays instead of using an industrial dishwasher and then reusable plastic trays. Did you at one time have industrial dishwashers, and what was the reasoning for getting rid of those?
Yeah, we
Just
did.
curious.
I remember we had the red ones, and then we had the industrial dishwasher, and something happened with it. It broke or something, and then the cost to replace it, and then there's a whole litany of reasons.
And why don't I'll jump in, just because, public comment is a defined time period, and
Oh,
just want.
okay.
and-
Well, I
but-
thought
but-
We'll
to
try
be-
and-
But this is great. Oh, no.
I told, we were supposed to have a meeting with them prior and then get on the agenda, but it was too late to put them on the agenda, so I told them to come on public comment and present to this, and then we could have follow-up meetings with them. So,
Perfect.
'cause,
That's
you
just
know,
good.
I
That's
run,
what I
I
was
run
just
our,
gonna
well, I
encourage.
run our committee a little looser than,
I was just
you
going to
know.
encourage a separate meeting, just because I think what you're
Yep.
bringing forward is great, and is
Yeah.
a good discussion item to have, and we could set up a meeting where we could get people in the room to,
Right.
to talk to you about,
yeah,
what
we
were some of those
missed,
decisions.
we had a failure to communicate, and we all got together about this prior, but, they had asked for time to present, so I
That's
was
fine.
willing to give it to them.
I promise, we'll keep it very brief. But styrofoam is one of the worst products to be using across our school board, across our school district. It lasts for 500 plus years. I mean, it does not break down. So, I mean, it's not a sustainable, material to purchase, and it's not leaving a great message with our students. We should be thinking about, using kind of environmentally friendly products or reusable products. I just brought a couple of things. We should be encouraging kids and not selling water bottles, instead, selling reusable water bottles. They should be bringing compostable silverware. We should really try and reduce the amount of, stuff that goes into a landfill. So,
What did you
and
find?
we are very, very happy to partner with you guys if you want us to research this. I'm happy to do that. Emily's happy to do that. So, if you could consider us as a partner in
Yeah,
helping
so
you
I
guys,
know we've
we're
tried to get together a couple times, and we
happy to
had
do
that
that.
big, we showed up the 5th, you showed up the 9th.
That's fine.
That failure thing, but,
Yeah,
no, I do appreciate you coming to the meeting, and, so these were some, the one there is what we use, and I know, Michelle, did you bring what we use, is in the back, yeah.
We did something a couple years ago, and Michelle, it
We
was
had a
in the
pilot
time
at one of the
since-
elementary schools.
It was in the time since Michelle came to the district. We made a change to the trays up at the high school, and this was a big conversation. I know that it preceded Ken's time here,
It
and,
was the first year I was here.
right, okay, so, but I couldn't remember the details, so I look forward to, but
I can
look
lea-
forward
I
to the
can lea-
conversation with you
I can
guys.
leave these with you, a sample of each one and the catalog. I mean, there are a lot out there.
So what do we use? Because that's the only one that looks like foam to me.
We use both. We use this.
You turn that so it's, yeah, thanks, Michelle.
I'm not trying to steal
No,
your
no,
thunder
that's
at all. We use both. We use this styrofoam tray, and we use this section tray up at the high school. At the elementary school, we use this hexagonal tray. We don't use them all the time, depending on what you're serving. We find that these trays kind of break down a little bit. They don't really hold up as well. The biggest problem we've had is, while these are, can be composable, if we put them in plastic bags, they're really not. So we've been trying to look for a solution. So we started the pilot with the trays back in 2017.
Yeah, right.
We partnered with the consortium with the Philadelphia schools, and we were able to get the trays for approximately 6 cents a piece for that first year of the pilot, compared to the styrofoam trays, which are 3. And I'm not suggesting that money is the only consideration, but it is one that we have to consider. These trays are now 16 cents a piece. And we use, across the district, probably, I would say probably about 2,000 trays a day. So,
That's a lot of waste going into a landfill.
so
Yeah.
I'm excited about the possibility
Yeah.
of looking at some other options, and maybe you have some ideas about how we could dispose of these so that they are, not ending up in a landfill.
Well, yeah, because if they're in a plastic bag and they're going in a landfill, they're not, and they're in with other non-compostable things, they're not compost.
Well,
I
it
mean,
all goes,
the
Trash
idea
esteem.
is, it's kind of like it's almost like a mind shift, which is, it's hard to break a habit, but, single-use plastic is like, it's everywhere. So it's almost like we have to break the habit and just say, no, we're not gonna package my styrofoam tray or this in a plastic bag with my plastic water bottle. We need to really help the students kind of shift their thinking. So instead of having a plastic water bottle available to purchase, why don't we say, here's a reusable water bottle for $5 and you can bring it to school every day. And sorry guys, we don't have plastic bags to put your stuff in. So it's kind of,
Yeah,
It's
my
like a
only
different
concern
way of
is
thinking.
it's not just I don't have a problem with it, let's just be clear, but it's not just a question of what tray we use. It's an
Yeah. No, I
entire
know.
operational change,
Yes.
and that is not a small subject.
Correct, and
So
it's
it really
an
warrants
operational
a
change.
significant
Yeah,
discussion.
and it
Yeah,
involves
absolutely.
with whoever our trash collector is
It
as well.
absolutely, that's why I'm
That's a
saying,
big
it's
piece.
fully operational.
And
And our trash goes down Delco, down to the trash and steam plant.
Delaware County has a trash esteem plan, yes.
so,
And the styrofoam burns.
Emily, have you met Mrs. Deco before?
I just introduced myself to her.
Perfect. So Mrs.
Yeah, we've
Deco
all
will
been-
reach out to you, and whether she does it through Mrs. Kevkis at the high school or not, we'll reach out to you to set up a meeting and to continue this conversation. And Emily, we appreciate your efforts and what you're doing, and both with the Conservancy as well.
no, we're seriously happy to
Yeah,
partner
we've all
with you
been-
guys.
Continue to have this discussion. We did put in, I don't remember how many, but Michelle might remember how many, Mrs. Deco might remember. We did put in the, with the water fillers just recently in the last couple of years,
Yep.
just to fill those bottles. And there's some people walking around with plastic bottles that they do reuse, but those are all pieces that I think are important for us to discuss and look at. But we have to look at the whole thing. There is a comprehensive piece to this and all the implications to it as
Yeah,
well.
including not selling water bottles is not okay, right? If somebody doesn't have a refillable water bottle, what are we saying? You can't have water.
They could,
Right.
That's a problem.
they could purchase a water bottle.
That's implying that somebody has $5 to purchase it. We have to be careful about the overall
I understand.
situation, because not everybody has $5 to purchase it.
So, and I want to take full responsibility for the fact that I sent the wrong date.
Oh,
And
that's okay.
Emily and Gretchen were there on the 9th, and we were there on the 5th, so I did reach out to them and apologize
worries.
profusely. So
No
we will
worries.
definitely get back together. And
Yeah, so we've been
Thank you,
trading
guys.
emails.
I'm gonna
and-
leave this little.
Gretchen, thank you, and
Yeah,
Emily,
give
thank
Mark
you
a-
for being here.
Give Mark a gift. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Put that at yet another to-do list item.
For us to meet. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. I know. Do we have any other public comment before? Doc?
I would just like to underscore the efforts that they're making at the high school and throughout the district in terms of trying to become greener. And I think the thing that we really need to remember in Radnor is all of that trash and all of that plastic that they're burning in Chester is going into our lungs. We are in the same airways. So while we don't see the landfills around Radnor, we do breathe the air. So remember, everything that's thrown into that trash is coming up into the air and down on Earth someplace, and part of it is in Radnor. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. Any other public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, approval of the minutes. Everybody actually read them?
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, agenda item number 1, the update on the high school athletic infrastructure project. Mr. Brooks.
As the board's aware, you all have approved Breslin Associates as the architect firm. They have been working, reviewing the feasibility study that has been previously taken place with the Schrader Group. We have a meeting with them, not this Thursday, next Thursday. The committee is meeting again this week to go over what we like, what we don't like, and trying to plug in some of the details that have come to light since that original agreement. So things are progressing.
Fabulous. Any questions, anyone? No? Good. Number 2, discussion about the Radnor Aquatic Club facilities use.
So the Radnor
Well,
Aquatic Club.
I'm gonna invite them up to the,
Oh,
two of them are here, so. Yeah. So they can answer any questions any of us might have about, well, limited questions we have.
Okay.
So Steve's here from RAC and then Mark.
Okay. So I understand that RAC is going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary as an organization supporting the swimmers of the community. They currently had an agreement with the Township School District since 2014 to 2019. What we did was break down what they the current agreement or the previous agreement that expired June 30th, which they've been acting on a month to month until the board can act on a finalized agreement. But just to give you a breakdown of what that original agreement looked like, the previous agreement was from 2014 to 2019 and ranged from $10,700 to $14,700, based upon a 950-hour base. After the 950, between 950 hours and 1,100 hours, RAC was paying $20 an hour additional. After 1,100 hours, they were billed $40 additional pursuant to that agreement. Just a breakdown of what some of the additional cost had been between 16, 17, and some of the other costs that were paid in addition to the 14.7. Additionally, the cost for the pool, IM Pool provides a supervisor and lifeguard. They were billed directly to RAC, not through those figures that we have. Actual cost to operate the pool. So the business office and looked at some of the numbers, as well as the athletic department, to determine who uses the pool and to come up with an amount of time, a percentage of time the pool was used by various groups, including our own students. And then we came up with a per hour basis, or per hour figure rather, on what it costs to actually operate the pool. And I will refer to you to that spreadsheet that you have, the long sheet that I handed out to the board members. And let me bring that up for everybody here. We'll touch base on this for a second. So when we went through this, looked at all the buildings and the various amounts of expenses that we have, focusing on the high school, which is 280,000, almost 281,000 square feet. We measured out the locker rooms and pool, determined it was about 12,626 feet, which represents 4.49% of the high school. Went through and did an analysis of the electric, water, sewer, natural gas, which is our heating, primary heating source for the building, stormwater, which of course we pay stormwater fee for the property itself. Oil, we do look at oil because we do have a boiler that in the event of a high demand gas day, we are required to switch over to oil, and how much money we spent last year in oil. Repairs and maintenance, insurance, telephone, maintenance supplies, trash removal. Salaries and benefits were for maintenance and custodial. And then the pool service itself was IM Pool, and then pool equipment and repairs that had taken place last year. You'll see down below this line here were items that we carried through. For example, IM Pools, RAC is not using the telephone, so there was no point in trying to assess a telephone fee for them because they're using, I'm sure, their cell phones. We eliminated the oil because we felt that was unfair as well. We eliminated the stormwater because we'd have to pay that anyway, whether we have a pool or we don't have a pool. It's the number of acres that we have. So we try to narrow down the actual cost that are associated that could be attributed to the pool. And then as we came down, we came up with the actual pool cost of $217,323.36, which comes out to about $93.92 per hour. When we looked at the amount of usage for the pool, we have our students are using it 277 hours a year, 12%. The community swim lessons are 788 hours, or 34%. Other groups that come in have 16 hours, or 1%, and the RAC was using it 1,233 hours for 53% during that period of time. And then, of course, the summary does not include the pool supervisor at $17 and lifeguard at $15 per hour. So we bounce back to the PowerPoint. And I would have put that in the PowerPoint, however, you would not have been able to read it. So, swim lessons. Currently, right now, IM Pool is running the swim lessons. RAC, in conversations with them, have expressed an interest in taking those over. Right now, we have very low attendance for swim lessons, evidently. We also offer community swim. This breaks down when it is and the cost for membership to participate in community swim. and it's been subsidized by the school district moving forward. Fees charged by the school districts was an issue we looked at and said, well, you know, what's fair? What are other districts charging, other like groups for their pool? And Lower Merion, Michelle had contacted them and came up with $33,150 for a 650-hour contract, or about $51 an hour. Rose Tree Media, $80, and Marple Newtown, $125. And again, this does not include the supervisor and lifeguard. They're billed separately. So we got together and thought, well, we need to get closer to the number of what it actually cost us. Came up with a proposal for over a 5-year period, trying to get us closer to that $93 mark. And this is what we proposed. And then anything over $950 would be billed at the actual rate. RAC counter proposed and came back with a base of $40,000 or $42.11 per hour. And then it goes through the 5 years. The rates are contingent upon RAC supplying their own lifeguards instead of using IM pools. Obviously, it's a cost that they're incurring, and they have obviously folks that are fully qualified to be lifeguards and supervisors, so it made sense that moving forward that they might be able to provide that themselves and have some cost savings to themselves. We looked at some years ago, apparently prior to myself getting here, before Michelle got here, the former business manager and director of operations had put together a pool fund and talked to the board. And again, I'm talking only historic what I have learned, so if you know something different, please correct me. Back in 2012-13, the concept was that they would be able to, the district would subsidize $25,000 to the pool fund, and eventually over a period of time it would become self-supporting and not have to worry about any subsidization. As you can see, some of the data up until after from 15, 16, 14, 15, 12, 11, it wasn't quite broken out the way that we have been doing for the past 3 years. Michelle's been doing a great job of tracking it, so we get a better idea of exactly where our costs are and what our revenues are. So looking at that, you can indicate, let me just, you can see that under revenues, just picked 18-19. There was a total of $33,520.38 of revenues came in. Expenses were $66,884.50. So there was a transfer from the general fund to subsidize the pool fund of $33,364.12. That was a loss, and I guess transferred $36,500 into that. Further, Michelle broke down as to what the profit or loss was for community swim and swim lessons, and that's indicated at the bottom of the screen, which may be tough for folks to see, but this community swim during the last year lost $10,706.25, and swim lessons lost $4,191.75. So that's where we are. I guess at this point, we're looking for some conversation with the board as to what their position is on this. Obviously, when we added up the numbers for the amount of revenue that the board has supported the pool fund for over that 5-year period, was transfers to the general fund was $211,473.50. So you have supported the pool quite significantly over the past 5 years, just in the operational aspect of things, in addition to some of the capital items that we have done over the past year or so. That capital items will be brought up again as we look at the whole infrastructure. But this is more focused on community groups and what we want to do, and at what point do we subsidize and what dollar figure is that? So I'll leave that for any questions that the board might have.
Right. I mean, we met with RAC, you and me, Michelle, Mike Friel, RAC, IM Pools. We met yesterday and discussed this, and you guys were going to go forward and have discussions with them, negotiate more. But do you guys have questions to ask about all this? I mean, obviously.
I mean, I guess.
I actually do.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Go ahead, Patty.
First, appreciate the analytical approach. Very, very much appreciate it. Because it gives us the real baseline and allows us to make an informed decision. So I definitely appreciate that a lot. My first question is, if there was no RAC, if RAC said, okay, fine, we'll go find somewhere else to do our swim program, what of these costs would we actually eliminate? Because what my concern is, or like it or not, we have a pool, and the pool's part of our program. And while I sincerely appreciate, we want to make sure that we're covering costs, if there's some sort of revenue generating, organization that's in there, then I would feel strongly that we need to make sure we totally cover our costs. I struggle in terms of how far to go with recovering our costs on a portion of the building that we know we're gonna have no matter what. So, are there any items on here that you go, okay, if there was no RAC, these would be reduced by some percentage?
Sure, electricity would be reduced significantly because we would not be running the dehumidification 24 hours a day, essentially.
Okay,
So you have the electric for that, as well as the pumps would not be running necessarily 24 hours a day.
okay,
It's conceivable your chemical usage would be reduced because you don't have as much usage in the pool.
okay,
Additionally, the natural gas would be cut back dramatically because we would not be heating the pool 24 hours a day.
okay,
And looking at the other ones, repairs and maintenance, we still have repairs and maintenance throughout the building, but there is additional wear and tear as other people use the facility. It's a normal wear and tear that you have to take care of. Obviously, the insurance, we'd still have the insurance no matter what. Maintenance supplies, we currently clean the pool area twice a day, so it'd be down to one a day. So some of those supplies would be reduced. Trash removal certainly would be reduced, and salary and benefits would be reduced. The
Okay.
pool service itself is a fixed fee. So whether we use the pool or we don't use the pool, that's what IM Pool charges us for the actual maintenance of the pool itself.
okay,
There may be some cost savings on that if we negotiate it, and certainly pool repairs and equipment might be reduced somewhat.
okay. So for me, that kind of creates, if this is the ceiling, that's the floor, right?
Understand.
And if we, and to find somewhere in between that makes it work for the organization as well as for the school district, because we do need to be sure that we are taking care of the costs related to our facilities. So that's kind of, I don't know what that number would add up to be, but that's kind of my thinking. My second question is really kind of separate from, I guess, RAC, but if we're gonna do this kind of analytical thinking on the use of the pool area, are we planning to do the same thing for the rest of the facilities?
Yes.
And to which end, I think that's probably gonna, people are gonna scream from the rooftops when we actually attempt to charge them what it really costs us to use the fields, to use the buildings, to whatever, right? We've done this reassessment now and sliced and diced it. Well, if you're an organization that's sponsored by the school district, you get a certain, and if you're an organization that's in the community but not sponsored by the school district, you get this rate, and if you're not a school district, we've tried to do it where it smooths things out, but, if we're gonna apply it to one, we gotta apply it to all.
Well, we certainly intend to do that, because the way you're gonna make a decision is based upon facts in front of you.
Yeah, which I,
Yeah.
like I said, sincerely appreciate.
My pleasure.
So actually, some of my questions really echo not only Patty's questions, but her perspective. And I'm looking at, I appreciate the work on both reports. I'm looking at this slightly differently. First of all, yes, we would have a pool regardless of if we had community swim, Radnor Aquatics, and even if we did swim lessons, we would still have a pool. So there's a fixed cost that I'm not sure that there's the perfect way to, figure out the exact incremental cost of RAC being in there. But one of the pieces of information for me is that to look at the numbers here, first of all, we were losing significant chunks we were losing money on the pool before RAC ever became a part of it. So there was if losing money on the pool is a problem, which, are we losing money on the classrooms? Are we losing money on the wood shop? Are we losing money on, the entire building? We're losing money because we're actually using the building. We're using every building in the district. So, school districts aren't really designed to be a profit center. So to that extent, we're always losing money in that we're expending money on our students and their experience, as students. But to look at the summary of Fund 54, we were losing money before RAC came in, and we've only needed to transfer, and I don't say only like it's a small amount of money, I'm just saying it's not the full cost of the 114,000 or whatever that we're looking for the swim team to pay if we brought them up to the $93 an hour. We've only needed, between 30 and 40, except for back in 2013 when we must have done some really large thing. Or we had the lifeguards. We only need $36,000 to break even on the pool. So I'm not really sure personally that I think we should be charging the RAC any more than what we're using as a transfer from the general fund. Now, I can see that one of the reasons that this picture up here looks different from the bigger spreadsheet that you did, is that those soft costs that I think are a little bit tougher to calculate aren't built into this particular model, exactly. And to Patty's point, and I think that's what she was, what I would say is, I think these fixed costs are maybe a little rigorous in terms of their application to the pool. So for instance, do we have actual salary and benefit costs of $129,000, or is that just a percentage of all the salaries up at the high school? That's not a question I expect you to answer now, Mark, but that's a pretty hefty chunk of this. I think that's just a percentage of the 4.9.
It is.
That may not be accurate. It may be higher, it may be lower. So that's one for sure that kind of strikes me. Yeah, so the straight calculation of the pool is 4.49%. I certainly appreciate that if we weren't running the pool for RAC, our electricity would be much lower for the pool area. But unless we have a separate meter on the pool for both unless we have a separate meter for the dehumidification system, I'm not sure that we can say with confidence that we know the pool is costing us $9,300 in electricity, or the natural gas. And I know that, Mark, you talked about wanting to heat the pool differently. You're
Correct.
making a proposal that's gonna save us money.
Yes.
So, of course, you're just showing us the numbers today, and it's a very analytical way of doing it. I really do appreciate that. It may not be actually accurate to what it actually costs us in that part of the building. And then there's just the philosophical, the premise that the pool shouldn't be costing us money. I'm not sure that I agree with that starting premise, because as I said, I think we could call, are we saying that about a chemistry room? The chemistry room shouldn't cost us money. I wouldn't say the cafeteria because the food service makes us money, but, is the gym costing us money? So I understand the logistics of making transfers from the general fund into the pool fund. I just want to make sure that we're not overly aggressive with what we're asking of our community. To Patty's point, I think if we start doing this level of cost counting across all the different parts of the high school and all of our other schools, yes, our community groups who already are paying taxes here, we will hear about it. So, I did read an email, and I couldn't pull it up now, that we're trying to find something that seems fair and reasonable. I'm not sure that all of these numbers should be included in that calculation. But I appreciate the real precision of how you approached it. And I do think that understanding that there are a whole lot more costs involved in having the pool, having the football field, having the wood shop, I know we don't have a wood shop anymore, but if we ever had a wood shop again. So I appreciate that real exact approach to it.
So the reason why it was done the way it was done is that's pretty much considered best practice across the Commonwealth for schools. You look at it per square foot basis. That's how we identify energy usage.
Sure.
That's how we identify energy savings. That's how PICO would identify energy savings
Okay.
when they came in here. So again, we try to look at it as a readily acceptable,
Sure.
certainly not flawless, but a readily acceptable methodology moving forward.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I think that the points that Patty and Susan raised, Mike and I already raised in our meeting, our preparation meeting with Michelle and Mark. We also understand that these are members of our community, that we have certain set costs. You know, RAC reached out to us separately, and we appreciate them being willing to come in and talk to us and understand that, you know, the rates we've been charging are much lower than other pools in the community would charge or in the greater area, and they recognize that they've been getting a very good price and they're willing to pay more. So I think that was very reasonable on their part, and I appreciate it. I think we also recognize that, you know, it may not be fair to suddenly go from, you know, $15 an hour to $90 an hour in, you know, the span of years, a few years. So I think you had given me an update today about a meeting you guys had with RAC and kind of where we came out in terms of a recommendation. I think it'd be helpful for everybody to hear that.
Well, we had a meeting yesterday. It was yesterday.
Yesterday.
God, week's getting really long already.
It's only Tuesday.
I know, right? And Steve was there, and two of your board colleagues were there, and they have a longer-term plan to actually, because when you have a pool like this, there's a set way you can make there's like, I don't want to say there's a set program, but the guys did it out in Westchester. You know, if you have a community pool like this, you can run the lessons. It can actually generate revenue for the pool instead of being a loss like this. And RAC has been a part of the pool since it was built. You're celebrating your 50th year, and the pool's 48 years old, so it has been a part of it. And the lessons back when my kids took lessons were always packed, and then when I taught lessons when I was in high school, they were always packed. So there's a way to get this back, and your board members had a way to do that yesterday and a plan. Yes. They have a longer-term plan. They would like a long-term lease. I mean, don't let me put words in your mouth. You guys would like a really long-term lease, but our issue with that is we're going to be shutting the pool down when we do that infrastructure project. So we don't want to do a long-term lease and then have you guys have a 2-year hole in the middle, or a year, or whatever it is. So what we're thinking of, and Michelle and Mark are going to have to continue negotiations with RAC, was a year to year until we shut the pool down, and then after the pool gets reopened, then re-up, then redoing another lease, maybe a longer term at that point, but also turning the lessons over to RAC. That would get their people more involved, their kids more involved, maybe even doing the lifeguarding, the community pools. There's issues with IM Pools, who's the management company. There was a whole host of issues that we had talked about yesterday. So, I don't know if anybody has anything to add. Judy?
IM Pools contract is up this year, so we'll be putting that out for competitive bid.
Did I read, I think that there was a proposal from RAC to get us to around $50 an hour.
That's right, yes.
Over a couple of years. So
right,
it's.
LM's 51, so we got to beat them. So.
But actually, I was gonna approach it from a little. So you're currently paying around 14 or 15.
Yes.
And, you know, if we took the 36.5 that we're taking, well, that's $29 an hour when you divide it by the 1,233 hours. That was the number that was on the sheet. Yeah, those. Pardon me.
With the 950 hours.
Oh, yeah, no, I
Right,
was
but
looking
then-
at the 1233, but,
Yeah, I was looking at the 950.
okay, so then you take the $38 an hour if you do 950 hours, add it to the 14 you're paying. Interestingly, it brings just to around the 50, somewhere between $43 and $52 an hour. You know, at least at that point, we're not having to theoretically to look at this, at Michelle's spreadsheet here, which is, you know, a history. We wouldn't have to be dipping into the general fund to cover the pool. And maybe that's trying to get us to that place until, you know, Mike says we're in the infrastructure world of, up at the high school.
Well,
That's
and
what we had talked
if the
about.
swim lessons
yeah.
are a loss for us, and that's something RAC would like to run, it's a potential revenue source for them, because they probably can run it more efficiently.
That's
You know,
our goal.
That would
yes.
help you to cover some,
Yeah, more
cover some of the
efficiently and-
hourly costs.
Right, and we'd also, they're paying, don't let me talk for you, but you guys are paying IM for lifeguards now, but you have your own.
Correct.
Save you
so that would save
$32
you-
an hour to
Well, it
have
would
a
only
supervisor.
save, because they still need a supervisor.
We would still need a supervisor.
As
So it would
okay.
save you 15.
But our vision is, especially with and by the way, I'm Steve Bevanor, the treasurer of RAC.
Thank you.
Uh, 878 Goshen Road. I have a daughter who's a swimmer, another daughter, and they just started the middle school. Been the treasurer for 3 years. First and foremost, Mark, Michelle, Mike Friel have been tremendous helping us as we've navigated these contract discussions. Our contract ended June, 3 months ago, and gracious enough to, continue us on the current rate until we get to closure. But to answer the question regarding the lessons, Jeremy Byrne, our head coach, is very optimistic that we could significantly grow and improve the program and turn it into a very profitable program, and also help feed, both the club and then ultimately the high school teams. Is really the vision is from swim lessons to Olympic trials is really, where we would like to be as an organization. So that's our vision. Just a couple quick points. We've got over 400 swimmers registered year-round. We are a nonprofit organization, a 501c3. We've operated effectively at a break-even position the past 5 years. Very much related to that is the tremendous deal that we've had from the district that predates, I think, pretty much everyone in the room in terms of that $14, $15 an hour rate. So we were very appreciative of the district's willingness to discuss, what we feel is a marketable rate that we can manage within our nonprofit structure. What we believe is that when we look at the Lower Merion comparable, that's a very apples to apples comparison relative to the size of our organization, the way we run, the number of swimmers that we have. So that 51 an hour, I'm not saying it to be glib, but it is very much aligned to the proposal that we've been working with Michelle and Mark on. So the flip side of that is at 93 an hour, our organization would not be able to function. We literally would not be able to service 400 swimmers, and that's obviously a major concern to us is just the capability of us to be viable financially to maintain that break-even status. So those are just a couple key points we wanted to share. In terms of the potential unavailability of the pool, we recognize that, and we're eager as well to work with the district because provisions will need to be made for the high school team as well, and it would be great if we could partner our organizations to boost our powers to do site selection and come up with a viable alternative while the pool was unavailable, if and when that were to occur.
Can I ask, and this isn't necessarily an issue for RAC, but we seem to lose a lot of money on the community swim piece, and reading this chart is the first time, this slide is the first time in my 16 years as a resident in the township that I knew that you could, as a member of the community, use the pool at the high school. So I'm just wondering if that's something we don't advertise for a reason. I mean, is there?
Well, that was not on our website. That's on the Township Recreation website.
Okay, so we actually, the township pays for the use and then we pay them, or I mean, they pay us?
We get paid directly. I'll let Michelle, because yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, Steve.
Oh, not at all.
Community swim is actually run by the district.
Okay.
We have our own employee who, no, I'm sorry, she works for us during the day, but she's an IM pool employee in the evening. She collects all the funds for community swim, all the membership fees. They come directly to the business office and are deposited into the community swim fund, Fund 54. And then we also get billed from IM pools for the supervisor and the breakdown. When I went back to research community swim, it is on our website. It's kind of hidden. It's difficult to find. There's not a lot of information. It kind of just says, please contact this telephone number. And the same with the swim lessons. There's not very much information about it. But the last time that I found that the rates had been looked at was 2012. Now, the rates that I had from 2012 are different than what we're currently charging. I haven't been able to research to see when they must have been revisited again, but I'm not exactly sure when that was.
Well, and I guess I had two different mindsets on this. On the one hand, wow, we have community swim. If that's something we're trying to make available, we should make it available. On the other hand, I looked at these hours and I went, wow, RAC doesn't want those out. Like, I wasn't sure, RAC wouldn't use that time. Nobody else. So I kind of was trying to figure out, if it's unprofitable because we don't really have community usage of the pool, is there someone else, is that Sunday afternoon interfering with meets that you could be?
Absolutely. We actually do rent outside pool space as we're managing to the 950-hour, block of hours that we have in our contract. So we absolutely could capitalize on additional hours. Again, we're very cognizant of the benefit of community swim.
Sure.
Not looking to infringe on that, but if there are additional hours available, we certainly could leverage them.
It's my understanding that there's something about this pool, like we have to have community swim hours, and I forget the stipulation, but no, Dr. Winters is nodding her head, so there must be some story about why it is that we have community swim time.
I'm not exactly sure of why we have community swim. The community swim times, if you look at what Mark presented, the time for the swimming is not real desirable, and it butts right up against when our custodians are leaving. So some of our preliminary discussions with RAC have been, maybe as we negotiate this contract, we want to look at community swim and maybe realign those hours. We're not talking about eliminating it altogether, but realigning those hours a little bit so that it might be more desirable. The one thing we're concerned about is, or I'm concerned about, I should say, I don't know that anybody else is just making sure that if we are doing that and we're making a change, that we have enough time to communicate to the families who use the pool
Absolutely.
what these changes are
And
going
if
to be.
people have paid membership fees, there should be hours
Right.
available to them.
Okay. Well, we have, 10 minutes to do the rest of our agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just as a follow-up to everything, this should present it to the board because the administration obviously cannot make that decision to go ahead and use general fund dollars. That is something the board can make. So that's the reason why you guys are presented this evening.
Right, but you guys are gonna keep negotiating.
We've done this
And then-
in past
But the
years.
budget includes the allocation towards from the general fund.
Yes, it includes the
Yeah.
$25,000 that always goes over
Right.
for community swim. And then there's also amount of money that's set aside for lifeguards for the swim program up at the high school. And what ends up happening is if there are funds left over from those lifeguard dollars, let's say I budgeted 35,000 and we only used 25,000, I'll transfer that remaining $5,000 over to the community swim fund.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so you guys will keep
Thank you.
having your discussions,
Thank
keep us in the
you.
loop, and then we'll be good. All right, so, new business. Patty?
Oh, yes. Yes. New business. So last night, the commissioners, as you guys know, had a discussion where Simone Collins came before them to request, I think it was $32,000 or $34,000 change order related to the design of I guess it's called the TAP Trail. And in that discussion, there were some questions about why the change orders, et cetera, et cetera. This is only part of the trail, which goes around the high schoolers, proposed to go around the high school, down King of Prussia Road, starting at our bus depot, all the way down around the corner and in front of the school along Lancaster Avenue to Radnor Chester Road. That proposal had come to us in 2017. We talked about it back then. We had an agreement drafted, and we were working with them, and we put the agreement approval on hold, waiting for the whole PennDOT process. And I guess we have actually seen other documents come before us. In order to submit to PennDOT, we had to agree to certain things with them, and we did, but we always had in our back pocket the ability to manage or approve
Yeah, we gotta
the
approve
plan
anyway.
based on the designs that come before us.
Yeah, we have final approval over anything we do.
Yeah, right. So the concern, and so we've been anxiously waiting to see the drawings, to see what the real plan was going to be, because there were some concerns about bridges and other, immovable objects and what the impact was going to be along our property, let alone whatever the setbacks were gonna need to be, based on the design. So last night, the thing that concerned me most was, questions were asked. Obviously, you guys know how I feel about the tree situation, but numbers were thrown out in the 170 range of trees that need to come down to put up the trail, with another 200 or so gonna be put up in their place. Trying to do some caliber matching. It's not gonna match for sure, but there is some outline in the tentative agreement or in the draft agreement that we had around those. But more concerning to me, and the biggest problem for us, I think, is the question whether the township was going to agree to remove snow. And as you guys will remember, way back when we started this discussion in 2017, I put forth a lot of objections, not the least of which was liability of having a trail go around our property, a trail that is intended to connect down to Haverford and potentially into the Philadelphia system for the purpose of having people be able to go from one community to the other, which sounds great, except our school is our property's pretty small, it's already congested, and it includes crossing over three of our driveway entrances onto our property. So last night, I guess when asked, I do not have the transcript from last night. However, I do have the transcript from the May 8th, 2017, when the draft agreement was discussed with the commissioners initially, and that the commissioners were voting to approve Simone Collins for the design of the trail. And at that time, they were made aware of the draft agreement, and that the draft agreement had incorporated some things that we were concerned about, the tree replacement, some other things, as well as a paragraph that was added, number 13, that speaks explicitly to the condition that the trail would be treated as a sidewalk, because it does complete the sidewalk from Radnor Chester Road to King of Prussia Road. There is nothing there now. There are sidewalks on either side, so when you put in this trail, the trail net effect becomes a sidewalk. And as a sidewalk, we will have liability for it. So I was pleased that we got that in the draft agreement at the time, felt somewhat assured that we had a draft agreement. The solicitor had it, they gave it to the commissioners, they talked about it at their meeting, but last night they seem to have forgotten. And they don't believe that they have to remove snow. So I just bring this forward because while I know that we are patiently waiting for Simone to come back to us with their design, I think we need to encourage some memory improvement on the commissioner's side, not so much on the commissioners, but with regards to the township and to Simone, who both stated last night, township staff, that they do not believe that we had an agreement about snow removal. So for me, we're at a point where they're expecting to walk in and we're just going to ratify this, or ratify some easement agreement for them to put a rather significant trail for public use around our property, and not live up to the agreements that we've previously had.
So,
Is there any
Here-
action to take at this
well,
point?
hearing what you're saying, one, I don't think there's any action for us to take right now. But two, hearing what Patty's saying, and we all have the same issue since she brought it to our attention. Why don't we ask Ken to talk to his counterpart over there and, hopefully remind him of this in light of what they said last night. And Sarah suggested adding ice clearing, because it says grantee shall provide for snow clearing. Well, it should be snow and ice clearing. And then I think it should also, it says to the township's sidewalk standards. It should be to our sidewalk standards, not the township's, because I don't know what theirs are, because some of their snow clearing sucks.
Yeah, ultimately, and thank you, Patty, I think that was a good summary. I think ultimately, we don't have an agreement because we haven't voted yet, and we've made that clear throughout this process. At the same time, though, we have had a lot of discussions about what we would like to have in the agreement and what are those things that are important to us as a district. I would be happy to reach out to the township manager. I'll share this again, this document. I think we should take this opportunity to look at this document as well with a new set of eyes and look at it and make sure, because since even the creation of this document, we've had additional walks on the trail, and there's been different pieces that we've talked about. We've talked about shade apparatus. We've talked about a lot of things, different pieces. So I think we should, relook at this again with a new set of eyes. I'll share it with them for them to look at it as well. And I think this is something that we can continue to have discussions with as they move forward with this.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern is this is already in the 11th hour. There's an expectation that we are just going to agree and, just capitulate and move on, right? Comments even at the May 8th, 2017 meeting where, well, what if the school district doesn't agree? Oh, so the school district's gonna, have the township walk away from a $1.7 million grant, like putting it all, like blaming us. We put this forth, we went back and forth in good faith, the solicitor had it,
He provided it to his board. His board publicly talked about it at the May 8th, 2017 meeting. They publicly acknowledged the snow removal was necessary, and they agreed to vote to move the design forward. So I believe that we have a tentative agreement. I'm a bit concerned. We open up this agreement, we run the risk of losing things in here that we thought was important. So not that I have a problem looking at it, but I just want to be careful that we don't, in opening the agreement.
We're not opening anything because we haven't agreed to anything.
So,
No, and.
We have a tentative agreement with them.
Well,
They
but
knew
to be
about
fair
this
to-
agreement.
Yeah, but to be fair to the commissioners, I wasn't on this board when this tentative agreement
yeah,
was
and they
formed,
didn't
some
have
of
two
them
board
weren't either.
members weren't on their
Right,
board. So it's
so,
time
yeah.
for Ken to do an update.
Yeah, just tell them,
Reach out.
yeah, just
You know.
say, you're, well,
Here,
you're more
let's,
diplomatic than I am, but,
But to be clear, I mean, I guess I'm gonna ask for this group to see if we are providing recommendation around things as important as snow removal on the property.
And-
What's our position on it?
well, and while we're going down this road of the trail, maybe ask Simone Collins, Mr. Simone, I always forget his first name.
Peter.
Peter, he loves us. So ask him to come talk to us again, and remind him of these things, like the fence, the shade structure, the snow and ice removal, all that.
So, my only concern, I mean, I don't mind having Mr. Simone come back, but the fact of the matter is, ultimately, this will be an agreement between the school district and the Board of Commissioners. And Peter Simone can come and give us any kind of update he wants, and he can go back to the Board of Commissioners and give them any kind of update he wants. And at the end of the day, this is an agreement between the school district and the Board of Commissioners, so it's a perfect time for Ken to reach out to Bob and say, hey, just, what's the status? Are things moving along? Did they get their PennDOT approvals? We are prepared to continue the, conversation about reaching an agreement on the easement. You've had a draft for 2 years. I haven't heard a single board member, Patty, to your question, I have not heard a single board member be inconsistent in their feeling that this is a trail that the township needs to be prepared to clear of snow. Sarah makes a good point with ice. But they do have 2 new board members that have come since that agreement was first looked, the draft agreement. We have 2 new board members since that draft agreement was made. So it's a good time to get an update, and Ken and Bob
I
are the
would
right
just-
people,
I
as
know,
Mike
I
said.
would like Peter here because every time we talk to him, we'd like these 3 things, and the next time he's like, well, here's the 2 things, and we're like, what about the third? And then,
Because he's not really an agent. He can't really negotiate
I know-
a township or a school district contract.
I know
He
that.
can't.
I know that. That's not the point. The point is every time we tell him we need to do this for your precious grant dollars, Peter, he's like, you guys don't count. My bosses are over there, so.
Well, maybe we can do this. Why don't we have either I will, in conversations with Bob or I'll ask Mark, let us find out what the status is. I mean, I think one of the pieces to this has been, it's been a long process. It's been a long process for the township, for Mr. Simone, with dealing with a lot of grants and a lot of applications, and the timing of all those things, I think, has been tricky for them and has been time consuming. So let's find out the status, and then we can determine once we find out the status whether it would be worthwhile to have them come back here and share that in a meeting or not. So let's find out where we are.
Absolutely.
It's a good idea.
I just also wanted, and I know I've brought this up before, but I think it may have been before you were here, Mark. We all need to be mindful if we have an infrastructure project going on in that section of our property, we may have construction needs as well, so we need to make sure that we're coordinating timing and who's responsible for what. We don't want them to lay down a fresh trail and we have to rip it up to put down sewer lines.
I'm gonna, I'll see if Mr. Brooks disagrees with me, but we have taken that into account. As
Okay,
well as
good.
everything that has been happening, especially with the construction of King of Prussia Road, we have taken into account the anticipation of a potential of a trail.
We have.
Great, okay.
In addition, we still, that part of that trail will be the sidewalk between where our bus drivers park and where the bus garage is. So that will need to be cleared of snow for them to get there.
Great.
Patty, you good?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and let's move on to the last public comment of the night. Anyone? Dr. Winters.
You gonna share our community SWIN obligations?
She's going to tell us the history.
There you go.
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road. I would suggest based on my limited recollection, but I will tell you what I know, is that Mr. Brooks contact Henry Himmons, who is still available, who I think Mark probably remembers from Radnor days. I remember when we changed Henry's position and this whole system came into place, and how concerned he was about it, because I was involved with the union at that time, and there were very many concerns about it. One of the things that I do recall, I believe, was that the reason that we provide community swim is when the high school was built, the Radnor Township and the school district shared in the building of the swimming pool. It was a joint venture. And I also believe that in the past, and I'm sure, Mike, when you taught swimming lessons and my children were there, you worked for Henry, but all of those things were also part of the Park and Rec program.
Yeah.
So when Radnor sent out those flyers with all the summer camp programs and everything, there was always something about the community swim programs, which everybody got in the township. So everyone knew they were available, everyone knew when the swim lessons were, and I don't know when and how the swim component got separated from the Park and Rec component.
Yeah.
But I think that made a difference in its use and also in terms of the revenue that was happening. I would also suggest that I also recall that in my time as a teacher, I remember teachers going to the Radnor High School at noontime, and also members of the senior center were coordinated with the swim pool, so they did like senior aerobics at the high school
Yeah.
swimming pool. There were times when teachers would go up at noontime and take a little dip, or aids. So I think that there was a greater use of the pool by the greater community, and I think since the contracted services have come in, things have changed.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was just because, Mr. Hammond's, his office was literally in the pool.
Well, and I also think there was a way in which the staffing was reallocated,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
made a difference, because there used to be someone whose job was basically to take care of the swimming pool, to
Yeah.
take care of the swim clubs, to take care of the swimming lessons that the students took at the high school, and he sort of oversaw the whole operation. That's how we came to the district, and that's how we stayed here for like 35 or 40 years. So he's still around, he's a fount of knowledge, and I think it would be prudent to perhaps re-examine how that whole operation works, and sometimes we have to go back to the future, and this may be that time. Thank you.
Henry was unique. Mr. Bajukas, how are you today? Thanks. You just turned your mic off. There you go.
Thank you. Just to take a moment. Jeff Bajukas, 228 South Wayne Avenue. On the issue of field use by community groups, you all are well aware, and Ms. Booker successfully negotiated an agreement with the soccer and lacrosse clubs that actually have them contributing to replacing the field in the future. It also requires them to pay for lights, security, a number of other things. So it wouldn't be the first time that the school district was covering its costs for operation by asking someone to contribute. RAC is a wonderful organization. My daughter was in it for a period of time. All you have to do is go to the school and see all the small children running around the hallway, learning how to swim. It's a fantastic operation. But the thing we have to remember about these groups, they're nonprofits, but they generate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in fees and donations. So RAC itself, over a 5-year period, publicly reported in their 990, generated $1.6 million in fees and other collections for admission. So when you're talking about $20,000 more, $30,000 more, and I'm not focusing just on RAC, I'm talking about any community group that is using the high school's fields, that's not a lot to ask. The soccer club, same thing, has about $600,000 in the bank right now that it's not using for operations. Lacrosse, about $100,000. All this is publicly reported. So as you're thinking about what's fair, some of these fees are already being collected and banked. And when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about wear and tear on the fields, we talk about the pool locker rooms, which are in need of attention, as I'm sure all of you have heard. There are ways to, wouldn't it be better to cover our cost of operating the pool and be able to set aside some of the money that we were otherwise using to do that to repair the wear and tear on some of these parts and have a facility that is a top-notch facility? I mean, I think Ms. Booker, she was able to think that way when we were negotiating with the turf, get a large donation to cover a portion of the cost of the turf, but also get the commitment on a way forward with regard to the facility itself, so that we're not left 10 years later having to start all over again without a commitment by those groups that are using it, not at full price, to chip in when we need to start talking about the facilities themselves. So it's not a zero-sum game. That money you're taking and you're giving to cover the cost is coming from somewhere else. And I would just say that, and these groups have a lot of money. I'm not saying that, I mean, I'm thrilled to hear that there's a negotiation. I think that the amounts of money, personal opinion, great. And obviously RAC is a tremendous asset to the community and the district, and needs to be, protected and needs to still be able to use the pool. But at the same time, I think we can work out an accommodation where we can also address some of the facilities issues that we constantly have with the athletic facilities at the school. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? That's it. Thank you for coming.